talked to a lot of your members in the caucus and their staffers who say they are more concerned about their safety now because of these pardons. I see the poster next to you. What do you think the safety and security implications are for Democrats, people in your district, because of the pardons?
Shameful that House Republicans have embraced the freeing of violent felons who brutally beat police officers on January 6th. These are violent individuals who beat police officers severely with fire extinguishers, sticks, flagpoles, and other types of weapons. Officers were tased. Officers were subjected to bear spray and other toxic weapons. And these violent criminals have been released, and those pardons have been embraced by House Republicans, including the top leadership. The release of violent felons who brutally beat police officers and women doesn't make America safer. It undermines public safety in community after community after community in the United States of America. Shame on my House Republican colleagues. What happened to backing the blue? Next question.
You are demanding that Grijalva be sworn in this afternoon. If she is not, what are you planning on doing, and are you going to be there for the proposal?
All options are on the table with respect to Representative-elect Adelita Grijalva. It's shameful that she has not been sworn in because Speaker Johnson and House Republicans apparently want to continue to hide the Jeffrey Epstein files from the American people. This has gone on now for weeks. And so it's my expectation that if she is not sworn in today, during the pro forma session today, as the Arizona Attorney General has made clear, expect swift and decisive legal action.
Following up on Grijalva, did you hear back from the Speaker in response to the letter that you sent him yesterday?
I have not heard back from the Speaker yet, but House Republicans and Senate Republicans have gone radio silent since the Oval Office meeting that took place about 3 weeks ago because they have no defensible position. Their position is we want to continue to benefit the wealthy, the well-off, and the well-connected and promote the lifestyles of the rich and shameless. That's the Republican position. That's what they did with their one big ugly bill. Largest cut to Medicaid in American history, devastating people across the country, ripping food from the mouths of children, and they did all of that so they could reward their billionaire donors with massive permanent tax breaks. And now with the Affordable Care Act tax credits expiring, they have zero interest in spending a dime to help out working class Americans. By the way, same group of people that found $20 billion, matched by another $20 billion, that the American taxpayers will be on the hook for $40 billion in total to bail out Argentina, and they can't find a dime to protect the health care of the American people. This is extraordinary stuff. And no word from the Speaker about any of it, because they just continue, unfortunately, to be rubber stamps for Donald Trump's extreme agenda. House of Representatives next year.
Thank you, Mr. Leader. Just changing topics. Obviously, I'm sure you've heard the story by now. The editor-in-chief of The Atlantic says he was caught on this text chain signal chat with top Trump administration officials as they were discussing these airstrikes in Yemen. What is your reaction to that, and do you believe there should be a congressional investigation?
There should absolutely be a congressional investigation so that we can understand what happened, why did it happen, and how do we prevent this type of national security breach from ever happening again. This is reckless, irresponsible, and dangerous. who are some of these people that Donald Trump has put into the most sensitive national security positions in America? We were promised that Donald Trump was going to hire the very best. It's all phony. The attacks on diversity, equity, and inclusion, phony. So it's never about hiring the best people. As Democrats, we actually believe in merit. Merit that should be based on what you know, not who you know. And understand, this whole Trump administration is filled with lackeys and incompetent cronies. I'm not talking about any particular individual, though I will note that the Secretary of Defense, who was on that chain, has got to be the most unqualified person ever to lead the Pentagon in American history. Think about that. You've put these people in charge in a very dangerous world, and then you want to attack communities of color, attack women, and attack others who are actually very qualified? C.Q. Brown, incredibly qualified, brilliant, served this country well. All of these attacks from the Trump administration on a diverse America, it's all phony. These people are incredibly unqualified, irresponsible, and they're jeopardizing America's national security. Thanks. Go back to this side.
Amid this feud between Elon Musk and Donald Trump, should Musk be called before a House committee and testify?
I haven't had conversations with members of the relevant committees, which presumably, could include budget or ways and means or judiciary or oversight. And until I have those conversations, I don't think there's much more to add. Right now, we're focused on killing the bill. The GOP tax scam hurts everyday Americans and rewards billionaires. That's not what we should be doing at this moment in time in the United States of America. We should be building an affordable economy that lowers costs for hardworking American taxpayers. The GOP tax scam, this one big ugly bill, does the exact opposite. It will raise costs and increase the financial burden on hardworking American taxpayers. That's what we're focused on as House Democrats and in support of the efforts of Senate Democrats to stop the one big ugly bill from ever becoming law. Thanks. This is day 7 of the Trump shutdown of the federal government. And Democrats in the House and Democrats in the Senate continue to hold the line on behalf of the American people. Why? Because we're fighting to protect their health care in the midst of a crisis that has been inflicted upon them by Republicans from the very beginning of Donald Trump's presidency. Republicans have hurt everyday Americans in order to reward their billionaire donors. That's what the one big ugly bill was all about. Largest cut to Medicaid in American history. Stole food from the mouths of children, seniors, and hungry veterans in order to provide massive tax breaks, permanent in nature, to the wealthy, the well-off, and the well-connected. Democrats have a very different approach to what we should be doing in order to make life better for the American people. And at this moment in time, that's addressing the Republican health care crisis that is devastating millions of people all across the country. And because of the Republicans' continued refusal to extend the Affordable Care Act tax credits, tens of millions of Americans are about to experience dramatically increased premiums, copays, and deductibles that will bankrupt them or deprive them of the health care that they need for themselves, their children, and their families. That's completely and totally unacceptable. And the government remains shut down right now because of the refusal and unwillingness by Donald Trump and Republicans to actually provide health care to working class Americans. That's an unacceptable position, and that's why Democrats continue to fight this fight on behalf of the American people. Whether they live in a blue state, a purple state, or a red state, this fight that Democrats are waging is on behalf of all Americans.
Mr. Leader, what precisely is partisan about the Republican bill?
Democrats did not support the spending agreement in March in the House of Representatives and overwhelmingly in the Senate because it represented, at the time, an attack on veterans, an attack on housing, an attack on nutritional assistance, and an attack on the health care of the American people at the time. That's why the bill did not receive support from House Democrats, with one exception, in March. So the legislation that they've put before the House and now the Senate in a take it or leave it fashion is just a continuation of a dirty spending bill that we did not support in March.
But Mr. Leader, this is a bill that would temporarily fund government. There are not the traditional riders that we see about policy on it. Are you saying it's partisan because Democrats won't support it? It's not a circular...
No, it's not partisan because Democrats won't support it. Democrats did not support it in March. We did not support this bill.
Why is this one that would be temporary funding through the end of November, why is that partisan?
It's partisan because it didn't have the votes in the House in a bipartisan way. There was no conversation, there was no discussion, there was no effort to actually sit down and figure out what type of spending bill would meet the needs of the American people. The notion that we're supposed to accept that this is a clean continuing resolution is a joke. It's not, it's dirty for a wide variety of reasons.
What are those reasons?
I explained it repeatedly, and it continues the assault on the health care of the American people.
Spending levels, the Democrats.
They are not the Biden spending levels. Let's be clear about that. The Biden spending level, that's another Republican talking point. The Biden spending levels were agreed to by President Joe Biden in the December continuing resolution. That's the bipartisan bill in December, not in March. That's the Trump spending level. And the notion that anyone would just accept the statement that those are Biden spending levels, when it's very easy to take a look at the bill in December that was passed with bipartisan margins and signed into law by then President Joe Biden, and the bill in March that was jammed down the throats of the American people in a very partisan way and signed into law by Donald Trump. Don't accept that idea that it's the Biden spending numbers when the facts say exactly the opposite.
Mr. Leader, will you call Speaker Johnson and implore him to swear in Adelita Grijalva?
We have made clear privately and publicly that Representative Adelita Grijalva should be sworn in immediately, without delay. Mike Johnson swore in 2 Republican members of Congress immediately after their April 1st special elections were concluded during a pro forma session when no one else was even around. And that was done by Republicans because they wanted to jam their one big ugly bill down the throats of the American people so they could rip away health care, steal food from children, and enact massive tax breaks for their billionaire donors. Republicans acted with great urgency to swear in 2 right-wing members of Congress to do in the American people in order to reward the wealthy, the well-off, and well-connected. But now, at this moment, Representative-elect Adelita Grijalva, who won by much wider margins than those two Republican members, there is no dispute or controversy relative to her election. And so many of us are asking the question, why the delay, Mike? What's the delay with respect to Representative-elect Adelita Grijalva? Does it have anything to do with Republicans' continuing effort to hide the Epstein files from the American people? Inquiring minds want to know. Second row.
Thank you. So the Department of Homeland Security released some information about some of the individuals that were apprehended during ICE's raid in LA over the weekend, and some of those people were previously convicted of murder and sexual battery and cruelty to children, amongst many other crimes. You say that if they wanted to go after violent people, that's something you could agree on. So do you support ICE detaining illegal immigrants that have criminal histories and backgrounds?
The Department of Homeland Security, under the leadership of the so-called Secretary Kristi Noem, is a complete and total embarrassment. And so anything that they put out should be scrutinized through that lens.
Nonetheless, is that something that you would agree with going
I made
after?
my statement on this issue, and we've been very clear that the deportation efforts of any administration should be focused on making communities safe and deporting violent criminals who are undocumented.
Have you gotten any indication at any Republican level that, yes, there could be some talks today, tomorrow, this weekend, Monday, Tuesday? Any indication whatsoever?
Mike Johnson has my number. John Thune has my number. He knows how to reach myself. He knows how to reach Leader Schumer. The White House knows how to reach us. They agreed to a meeting, backed away from the meeting. We've heard nothing from them.
But can't
Why?
you pick up the phone?
It's because, listen, here's the problem. Republicans want to shut the government down. How is that not clear at this moment in time? The American people know it. They canceled the White House meeting. They canceled votes that were supposed to take place next Monday and Tuesday in advance of the shutdown. Here's what Democrats want to do. Cancel your cuts that have hurt the health care of the American people.
Thank you. In the event that a shutdown takes place, I'm wondering what does Democrats' exit strategy look like to get out of it?
The exit strategy is that Democrats and Republicans should sit down and have a conversation in a bipartisan way about funding the government in a manner that meets the needs of the American people, as opposed to what Republicans have been trying to do, which is to continue to gut the health care of the American people. This is not complicated. You have Republicans in the House and the Senate, including Senator Lisa Murkowski, and a significant number of Republicans in the House who have said, we agree with Democrats, the Affordable Care Act tax subsidies should be extended so that we can find a way to avoid Republicans continuing to do damage to the health care of the American people. That's actually the bipartisan position. Our position, protect the health care of the American people. To me, that's the exit strategy. Like Republican leaders in the House and the Senate, Donald Trump should just listen to their own members. And we can find a path forward. Cancel the cuts, lower the costs, save health care. Not complicated, 8 words. Even Donald Trump should be able to understand that. Stop lying to the American people about the this, the that, and the other thing. You know that none of the things you're claiming we're demanding have anything to do with anything that Democrats have said. It is clearly the case that federal law prohibits any taxpayer dollars from being spent on the health care of undocumented immigrants. Does Donald Trump not know that law? Democrats have been very clear. We're not demanding that that law be repealed. We're fighting for the health care of American citizens. And we'll continue to make that fight.
Mr. Leader, you characterize the president's first 100 days as a failure. I wanted to get your thoughts. It's been a few weeks after Congress's 100-day mark. What are your thoughts on how House Democrats, how congressional Democrats as a whole have responded to this failure? You say that you all are communicating in different ways. You just spoke about the city, and you say we're going to see more in the upcoming weeks. How would you characterize or reflect on how House Democrats have responded to this moment over the past 100+ days?
Well, one, a lot that we'll continue to do has to do with timing and the rhythm of the legislative process and how we engage in making sure that we are aggressively pushing back when the moment presents itself so that we can defeat the reckless Republican efforts to hurt the American people. We continue to be in a more is more environment. Not less is more, a more is more environment. Rallies, press conferences, demonstrations, sit-ins, town hall meetings in Democratic districts, town hall meetings in Republican districts, days of action. More will continue to be more, including, by the way, Democratic-led steering and policy hearings. We've now had 4 in the Capitol, and we'll be traveling the country. More is more. And that's, I think, what you've seen over the last 100 days, and that's what you'll continue to see.
Do you think these efforts have helped to crater some of Trump's popularity? His approval seems to be going down, and 4 polls yesterday show that his approval continues to go down. Do you take any credit for what's been happening in public opinion over the last few weeks as it pertains to Trump's economic numbers?
It's a great question. What we said from the very beginning is that Donald Trump lied about his willingness to lower costs in America and drive down the high cost of living. We said that from the very beginning. And that we had them on the run on the economy, on health care, and Social Security, with the economy being first amongst equals, while at the same time, of course, defending freedom, liberty, justice, and due process in the United States of America, and will continue to do that. But Donald Trump made a core promise to the American people. He was going to lower costs on day one. Costs aren't going down, they're going up. Inflation is on the way up. Donald Trump is crashing the economy. And Republicans in the Congress, these rubber stamp Republicans, are actively letting it happen. And that's why the American people have said, inside of 100 days, enough. This is a disaster. It's an unmitigated disaster. This guy has the lowest approval rating of any president in modern American history inside of 100 days. That's extraordinary. This is the same group that bragged to all of you and the American people that they had some extraordinary mandate. We said from the very beginning there was no mandate. News of our demise was greatly exaggerated.
Thank you, Leader. Just to be a follow-up on that, so are you saying there's no reforms to the Affordable Care Act that are on the table at all for you?
What I'm saying is that we have an open mind as it relates to an extension of the Affordable Care Act tax credits based on the merits of what is presented in good faith. Republicans arguing that the Affordable Care Act tax credits are connected to a program that benefits wealthier Americans is ludicrous. MAGA Republican voters don't even believe it, because a majority of them, MAGA Republican voters, correctly want the Affordable Care Act tax credits extended.
Thank you for taking my question. There are some members in your conference that have suggested impeaching President Trump over these Iranian strikes. Impeachment has come up not just from AOC, but other members. Is that a tool on the table for you if you were to take back the House?
I think what's on a tool that's on the table right now is to continue to demand that the administration present itself before the United States Congress and make the case to the American people as to why this extraordinary step has been taken. That's step one. Step two is for the War Powers resolution, whether that's the one that has already been introduced or others that may subsequently be introduced, for those resolutions to be debated on the House floor, as should have occurred already. And then we'll see where we're at thereafter.
So you're not taking any calls for impeachment seriously right now?
This is a dangerous moment that we're in, and we've got to get through what's in front of us. And what's in front of us right now is the Trump administration has a responsibility to come to Congress, justify its actions, for which we've seen no evidence to justify its offensive strike in Iran. And we also don't even know how effective the strike has been. There's zero evidence that I've seen that the nuclear program was completely and totally obliterated, as Donald Trump has claimed. No evidence that has been presented to Congress to suggest that that has occurred. Let's see what happens at the classified briefing tomorrow. Schumer, we had a very strong and productive, open-ended and comprehensive conversation about the way forward on behalf of the American people. House and Senate Democrats are in complete and total alignment. As Leader Schumer indicated, in order to arrive at an appropriations agreement that meets the needs of the American people in terms of their health, their safety, national security, and economic well-being, it has to be a bipartisan process that's bicameral in nature. Democrats, Republicans, House, and Senate. And as has always been the case, we're prepared to engage in those discussions in good faith. But House Republicans are not there. House Republicans are, in fact, marching us toward a possible government shutdown that will hurt the American people. We remain ready, willing, and able to have the type of appropriations process that will yield a good result for the American people, but that process must be bipartisan and bicameral in nature.
Thank you. Senator Murray. He's doing a great
Mr. Leader, I understand that you are not going to be intimidated by the Trump administration, but there are federal workers who don't want to get caught up in a political fight here. What would you say to federal workers that are just worried about losing their jobs?
Donald Trump and the administration have been engaging in mass firings that we deem illegal throughout the year. We will continue to push back against any effort to undermine federal civil service protections that exist in the United States of America. As a negotiating tactic, our response to Russ' vote is simple: get lost. These DEI hires in the Trump administration, like Pete Hegseth, the so-called Secretary of Defense, dumb effing individuals, continue to try to test our resolve and cancel our history. The latest is a book ban at the Naval Academy that removes works, including those about slavery, the civil rights movement, and the Holocaust. At the same time, keeping books written by Adolf Hitler. Apparently, for these extremists, racist Nazi ideology and white supremacy is okay. We're going to keep the pressure on these extremists who continue to try to whitewash our history. They tried to cancel Jackie Robinson. We reversed it. They tried to cancel Harriet Tubman. We reversed it. They tried to cancel the Tuskegee Airmen. We reversed it. We're going to keep the pressure on until this book ban is reversed and Pete Hegseth is fired.
Two resolutions condemning the Boulder attack are coming to the floor this week. One of them, from Congressman Gabe Evans, includes language labeling Free Palestine an anti-Semitic slogan and also praising ICE for quote-unquote protecting the homeland. I know that some of your progressive members are very unhappy with some of that language. I'm wondering, A, how you plan to vote on that personally, and B, how you're advising members to vote on it.
It's not simply a subset of members of the House Democratic Caucus who oppose the so-called Evans resolution. Who is this guy? He's not seriously concerned with combating anti-Semitism in America. This is not a serious effort. This guy's going to be a one-term member of Congress. He's a complete and total embarrassment. He's not even pretending to be moderate at this point. He's all in on ripping away health care from the American people. And this is a desperate attempt to distract. Why do we know that's the case? Because every major Jewish organization, including AJC, has come out in opposition to the so-called Evans resolution. Every major Jewish organization, as far as I can tell. These are organizations that are at the forefront of combating anti-Semitism in America. That resolution is an embarrassment. It's not serious. It's a joke. And Gabe Evans is a joke. And he's on his way out. He's done in November of 2026.
So is leadership whipping against that resolution?
I don't know. We don't normally whip one way or the other as it relates to resolutions. And so it's not my understanding that a decision has been made different than the approach that we normally take. I'm a no. And everyone will have the ability to make their decision in terms of what's in the best interest of the districts that they represent. Anti-Semitism is a scourge on America. Shouldn't be weaponized politically. It's not a Democratic issue or an American issue or a Republican issue. It's an American issue. And we should tackle it not as Democrats or Republicans, but as Americans. So I'm going to stand on the side of the overwhelming majority of Jewish organizations who have the credibility on this issue and have concluded this is not a serious effort to solve what is a serious problem, anti-Semitism in the United States of America.
Do we deserve a country that puts families over billionaires? Are you ready to help us stop Donald Trump's one big, ugly bill? Are you ready to make sure that we crush this GOP tax scam? What an honor and a privilege to be here with all of you. So thankful that you've come out, even with this light rain, because you understand that the stakes are incredibly high as we stand up for the health care of the American people and all of the things that are being threatened by this dangerous GOP tax scam. We got several messages. Democrats have been battling all day, all night in the Rules Committee. They started the Rules Committee meeting earlier at 1 a.m. in the morning. They didn't expect for us to show up. Democrats have been showing up for the last 14 hours with hundreds of amendments, flooding the zone with righteous legislation on your behalf, and delivering the message that Congress is a separate and co-equal branch of government. We don't work for Donald Trump. We don't work for J.D. Vance. We don't work for Elon Musk. We work for you, the American people. And because we work for you, we've got to do everything possible. It's all hands on deck to stop this aggressive and egregious overreach from seeing the light of day legislatively in the House, and certainly preventing it from ever getting to the current president's desk at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue. Why do we oppose this bill? It represents the largest cut to Medicaid in American history. Take away health care from millions of people. Families will be hurt. Children will be hurt. Women will be hurt. Everyday Americans with disabilities will be hurt. Hospitals will close. Nursing homes will shut down. People will die. The largest cut to health care in American history. And on top of that, the largest cut to nutritional assistance in American history. They literally These extremists want to take food out of the mouths of children, veterans, and older Americans. And they're doing all of this to enact the largest tax break for billionaires in American history. It's unacceptable, unnecessary, unconscionable, unpatriotic, and un-American. And together, we're going to do everything to bury this GOP tax scam in the ground, never to rise again. And make sure we always put families over billionaires. We're going to stand up for families, stand up for children, stand up for veterans, stand up for Medicaid, stand up for nutritional assistance, stand up for Medicare, which is also under attack in this bill. Stand up for the American dream. Because we believe that in this great country of ours, we've got to fight for it. But in this great country of ours, when you work hard and play by the rules, you should be able to provide a comfortable living for yourself and for your family. Have a good paying job, educate your children, purchase an affordable home, have access to high quality health care, and of course, one day retire with grace and dignity. That means protecting your Social Security and your Medicare at all times. Those aren't entitlement programs, they are earned benefits. And in this bill, they're going after Medicare, attempting a $500 billion cut. And so we've got to do everything that we can to push back against these extremists, to bring the American dream to life for every single person in this great country, and always put families over billionaires at all times. And so lastly, you're going to hear from a great number of speakers from the House and from the Senate, all of whom are dedicating everything we have to stopping this bill in its tracks. And so our message to the Republicans, the message that we will carry as I cross the street and go back into the House of Representatives, is keep your hands off our Medicaid, keep your hands off Social Security, hands off Medicare, hands off our veterans, hands off our children, hands off our seniors, hands off the least, hands off the lost, hands off the left behind, hands off the poor, hands off the afflicted, hands off the sick. Keep your hands off everyday Americans, hands off the American way of life, hands off today, hands off tomorrow, hands off this week, hands off next week, hands off this month, hands off next month, hands off this year, hands off next year. Keep your hands off the American people forever, and always put families over billionaires. God bless you.
What do you make of it? The person accused of threatening you is the recipient of one of those blanket pardons.
I think the reckless and irresponsible pardons of hundreds of violent felons on January 6th has consequences, as eloquently articulated by Representative Jamie Raskin. There are consequences to that, beyond me. Beyond me. The consequences are, we've seen crimes committed by people who Donald Trump pardoned on the first day he was sworn into office, by folks who have been released back into society all across the country. Some of them violent crimes. And so there are consequences to these irresponsible actions, and not a single House Republican has walked away from them, not a single one. There are consequences when these extremists who are part of the Trump administration label the entirety of the Democratic Party as terrorists or criminals. There are consequences to that beyond us. We all know what we've signed up for, but there's pain being visited upon the American people because of actions taken by Donald Trump, supported by House Republicans and Senate Republicans on day one of his presidency. and I'm going to yield to my two colleagues, but by the way, what Donald Trump promised to do on day one of his presidency was lower costs for everyday Americans. That was the promise. He lied to the American people all of last year. Did he ever say I was going to pardon hundreds of violent felons who brutally beat police officers at this Capitol on January 6th? Did he ever say that? Was that the promise that Donald Trump and the Republicans made to the country? No. They failed to lower costs, have done nothing. Life is more expensive for everyday Americans. Electricity costs up. Grocery costs up. Housing costs up. Now they want to jack up health care premiums on working class Americans. But they have time to pardon hundreds of violent felons, release them back into society, threatening the public safety of everyday Americans, and then can't spend a moment trying to make life more affordable, make health care more affordable for the American people.
Can I add
Jamie?
one thing to this? Thank you for that question. Up until Donald Trump, the pardon process was governed by Department of Justice rules, by statute, and of course by the Constitution. And there was a very set pattern, which is each pardon application was considered on its own. It was analyzed what exactly that person had done, what they were convicted of. And up until Donald Trump, nobody had ever been pardoned who had not paid back in restitution their victims of a crime or paid back fines to the government. In other words, you had to make yourself completely whole, then you had to demonstrate that you were rehabilitated, that you accepted the reality of your offense. Now, contrast that with what happened with Trump. He gets in on his first day in office without any reports from the pardon attorney about any of these people, any recommendations saying that they have paid off their restitution, they've paid their fines, they've made peace with their victims and so on, they've apologized to the police. No, none of that had happened. Instead, they issued a blanket pardon for everybody who had stormed the Capitol and participated in the shocking and atrocious events of January 6th. So what do you have in that mix? You have people who have been convicted before for domestic violence, for assault, for armed robbery, you name it. Drug dealing, gun dealing, all of that's in there. And what do you know? After this mass pardon happens, people start getting picked up again. There's a guy down in Richmond who was burglarizing all of the houses in his neighborhood. And now this guy, Moynihan, says he's going to eliminate the minority leader of the United States House of Representatives. So they have enough people over at the Department of Justice who know a lot about January 6th, including Ed Martin, who was there tweeting on that day, describing it as a day of celebration like Mardi Gras, and his senior advisor, Jared Wise, who was here yelling, "Kill him," about the police, that they should know how to get these people into line, because it's a very dangerous situation. And I just want to add finally to what Mr. Jeffries said. Speaker Johnson described the exercise of First Amendment rights across the country by 6 or 7 million Americans as part of the No Kings rallies as a Hate America rally. The Hate America rally happened on January 6th, 2021. We saw what a Hate America rally looks like. There were more than 140 police officers who were wounded, injured, hospitalized. Many of them have been forced out of police work because of what happened on that day. And what does Speaker Johnson say about that? Nothing. Now, he's part of the cover-up. He's part of trying to sweep the whole thing under the rug. Meantime, you had 7 million people participating peacefully, non-violently, in the American political process yesterday, and everybody should be praised for that. Those protests were a model for First Amendment exercise in the United States.
Thank you. Thanks.
In your interview on CNN, you mentioned blue states that might try to do mid-decade redistricting as a counter to Republicans. You specifically mentioned some that have independent redistricting commissions or that explicitly prohibit mid-decade redistricting in state law. How do you get around that?
I think that we continue to have conversations with the state delegations, whether that's in California or New York or beyond, to explore what the opportunities and possibilities are in order to make sure that the congressional map in 2026 is as fair as possible. We also believe that if Texas goes forward with this extreme mid-decade congressional gerrymandering, which shows how desperate these people are because the American people are rejecting them and their policies, including their signature One Big Ugly Law, that there will be several current Texas Republicans who will be made vulnerable in the midterm election, and that they should be careful with what they are doing because many of them may not return in the aftermath of the midterm elections.
Thank you, Mr. Leader. Earlier today, Trump floated the idea of tariffs on foreign films. He says he has not come to a final decision, but in recent years, movies, TV shows, they have moved out of the United States. What policies or steps do you want to see from the federal or state level to help bring movies, TV shows back to the United States, keep them in the United States, whether it's Hollywood, Georgia, or New York?
Well, the film and television tax credit that has existed for a while in New York has been an important part of continuing to sustain and grow domestic film and TV production. And I certainly think that using the tax code in that way is actually a positive way to incentivize as much production as possible in the United States of America. In terms of this idea or that idea that Donald Trump continues to throw out there, again, it's all a distraction from the fact that Donald Trump's first 100 days have been a debacle. He has failed the American people. The core promise that Donald Trump made and that Republicans made to the American people on the campaign trail repeatedly was that they were going to fix a broken economy and drive down the high cost of living. In fact, Donald Trump said that costs would go down on day one. The reason why he's the most unpopular president in modern American history after the first 100 days, despite all of the big talk of a mandate and the Democratic Party being in retreat, is that he has failed on the economy. And Republicans have failed on the economy. And so all the random stuff that gets thrown out there, which is not how policy should be made in a sound manner, all the random stuff that gets thrown out there, I mean, it's just hard to take it seriously, and it's hard to evaluate it outside of the context of Donald Trump trying to distract the American people from the fact that he's been a failure as president. The House Republicans are failing. They are completely in retreat. They are canceling committee hearings. They keep blowing through their own deadlines. Originally, this big ugly bill was supposed to be enacted by early April. We're now in May. They're canceling hearings. They said, well, we're going to get this done by Memorial Day. That ain't happening either. And it's because the American people view these Republican policies as dangerous and harmful. And Republicans haven't figured out how to break away from being a rubber stamp for Trump's extreme agenda. And that's why we're seeing this level of paralysis. Good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon.
Trump administration continues to unleash chaos, cruelty, and corruption on the American people. Donald Trump and extreme MAGA Republicans have been a complete and total failure, domestically and internationally. Donald Trump promised that on day one of his presidency, he would end the war in Ukraine. He promised on day one of his presidency he would free the hostages to bring about peace in the Middle East. And Donald Trump promised that on day one of his presidency, costs would go down in the United States of America. None of it has happened. Instead, costs in the United States of America aren't going down, they're going up. Donald Trump and extreme MAGA Republicans are crashing the economy in real time and driving us toward a possible recession. Donald Trump and House Republicans have not done a single thing to lower the high cost of living in the United States of America. Not a single thing. Instead, Republicans are trying to jam this one big, ugly bill down the throats of the American people. The GOP tax scam represents the largest cut to Medicaid in American history. It's an all-out assault on the health care of the American people. Children, families, people with disabilities, seniors, veterans will all be hurt by the GOP tax scam. Premiums, co-pays, and deductibles will go up for tens of millions of Americans. Hospitals will close, nursing homes will shut down, community-based health clinics will be unable to operate, and because more than 16 or so million people in America will lose their health care, people in this country will die. That's what Republican governance has brought to the United States of America. The GOP tax scam will also cut nutritional assistance from the American people. Children and seniors and older Americans will literally have food ripped away from them. And this all-out assault on health care, this all-out assault on nutritional assistance is being done by Republicans so they can provide their billionaire donors with massive tax breaks that they don't need and don't deserve. The one big, ugly Republican bill will hurt everyday Americans in order to reward billionaires. At the same time, Donald Trump and his actions, which do not appear to be consistent with the United States Constitution, takes unilateral offensive military action without seeking the approval of the United States Congress. The use of military force, which is offensive in nature, must be approved by the House and the Senate. That's according to the Constitution. It's not optional, Donald. It's not. The framers of the Constitution actually gave Congress the power to declare war for a reason, so the American people, through their elected representatives, would have the opportunity to debate the issue and make some decisions as it relates to what's in the best interest and the national security of the American people. Donald Trump and the administration chose to ignore the Constitution. And so they're going to have to come before Congress and explain their justification for an offensive military strike against Iran. Yes, we can never allow Iran to become a nuclear power. And of course Israel has the right to defend itself, and will support Israel's security in an ironclad manner. But the Trump administration intentionally decided to ignore the aggressive diplomacy that was available to it to try to address the Iranian nuclear threat and ignore the requirements of the Constitution, and now they've got to explain why. And we expect that justification, not just at the classified briefing behind closed doors tomorrow, but we expect them to explain to the American people the basis of the strike. What were the results in terms of actually thwarting Iran's capacity to become a nuclear power? And what are the Trump administration plans to avoid another potentially disastrous war in the Middle East where thousands of American lives are potentially at risk? What is your plan to avoid another foreign war? A promise you made, a promise that Donald Trump made to the American people last year. And just like every other major promise that he made on the campaign trail, he's failed to keep it.
There are some reports floating around that Speaker Johnson might not bring the chamber back next week. What guidance have you gotten about next week's House schedule, and are you concerned about this further delaying the swearing-in of Congresswoman-elect Adalita Grijalva?
House Republicans continue to be on vacation, spread out across the country and the world, and this makes no sense. It's Exhibit A for the fact that House Republicans wanted to shut the government down and have no interest in reopening it because they don't want to provide health care to everyday Americans.
Have you spoken to Speaker Johnson about the timing of swearing in of Adalita Grijalva, and if so, what did he say?
It's our expectation that Representative-elect Adalita Grijalva will be sworn in as soon as the House is back in session next Tuesday. Yep. Yes?
Ms. Leader Jeffries, what is your comment on the latest mass firings at NIH, at HHS today, announced today, in context of the others that we all are caring about?
The mass firings are likely unlawful, will likely be challenged in court, and we also know that it does nothing to improve the health, safety, and economic well-being of the American people. It will hurt it.
Thanks.
Chad.
Thank you. Good afternoon. The Republicans made a big deal about how the Biden administration handled the border last year. That was a major issue in the election. But then we have this officer from the CBP who was shot in Manhattan last night, and Republicans are saying, see, this is, part of the policy. People got in the country illegally. They shouldn't be here. What's your response to that when something that tragic happens in your home city?
It's my hope that the victims of this criminal act are able to fully and completely recover, and those responsible for the criminal act should be held accountable and prosecuted to the full extent of the law. At the end of the day, we have to make sure in this country that we secure the border, fix our broken immigration system in a bipartisan and comprehensive way, while at the same time standing up for dreamers, farm workers, and law-abiding immigrant families. There are a lot of people throughout this country who now disapprove of the Trump administration's approach to immigration, who were promised that the Trump administration was going to focus on deporting violent felons as opposed to targeting children and law-abiding immigrant families. The Trump administration should spend the billions of dollars in taxpayer resources that it has to make this country as safe as possible by focusing on deporting violent felons, not showing up at Little League baseball games, churches, schools, and hospitals.
Leader Jeffries, speaking.
Thanks.
Different topic, Mr. Leader, if you don't mind. President Trump announcing widespread pardons for the group of people that were involved in providing alternate electors, as they called it, for the 2020 election. And he also has allegedly received a commutation request from Ghislaine Maxwell. Just wondering about your thoughts about the way the president has handled his pardon power, especially given how critical he was of President Biden?
Well, Donald Trump, in terms of the exercise of his pardon power and commutations, is completely and totally out of control. Like, he can find the time to pardon a serial fraudster like George Santos, but can't find any time to sit down with Democrats on Capitol Hill who represent half the country in order to address the health care crisis that Republicans have created. That's devastating people in urban America, rural America, working class America, small town America, the heartland of America, and black and brown communities throughout America. And so what we're seeing with these toxic pardons and commutations coming from Donald Trump is more of the same. And look, the American people know these extremists on the Republican side have gone too far. And the crazy part about it is that they went too far on day one of Donald Trump's presidency. And it's been downhill ever since. On day one of Donald Trump's presidency, this guy pardons hundreds of violent felons who brutally beat police officers, 140 of whom were seriously injured. Life-threatening injuries in many cases. And then unleash these people on communities all across the country in ways that put those communities at risk. And what we've seen from Donald Trump since day one, since those toxic pardons of those violent individuals, is more of the same. From a person who promised to lower costs on day one, but doesn't give a damn about the American people. And what has taken place over the last 41 days is that the American people have seen Democrats fight for them, fight to make life better for them, fight to drive down the high cost of living for everyday Americans, and fix our broken healthcare system in the face of this overwhelming Republican assault on the healthcare of everyday Americans. And Republicans continue to stand up for the wealthy, the well-off, and the well-connected.
Over here.
Thank you. Everybody's saying all these options on the table, you're here to support them. Can you give us a clue as to what those options are and what tangibly are the National Democrats doing to help protect us?
Yeah, let me simply say I've got great confidence in the Texas Democrats in the House and in the Senate to stand up and fight in the best interest of the people that they represent. All across America, over the last 6+ months, we've seen corporations bend the knee, law firms have bent the knee, colleges and universities have bent the knee to Donald Trump. Texas Democrats will not bend the knee. They will stand up for the people that they are privileged to represent.
Yeah, but I think what John's saying is that, and we've covered a lot of this over the years, legislative fights, elections, et cetera. I'll paraphrase Texas Democrats. They kind of feel like the fighters of the Alamo. They do their best, but no help is coming. What is different? What help is coming?
I'm here to make clear, as House Democratic leader, in partnership with the Texas congressional delegation, that it's not simply the case that help is on the way, help is here. And we stand with Texas Democrats on behalf of fighting for the quality of life issues around the economy and healthcare and housing and combating corruption that are important to the people of Texas. And Texas Democrats understand that if Republicans are allowed to gerrymander this congressional map, the quality of life of the people of Texas will continue to be undermined. Donald Trump and House Republicans here passed this one big ugly bill that rips away health care from millions of people, including here in Texas. Ends Medicaid as we know it, here in Texas. Steals food from the mouths of children, veterans, and seniors here in Texas. Makes it harder for the people of Texas to get a high-quality education here in this great state. So all of these issues are at stake in fighting for a congressional map that gives the people of Texas the ability to choose their elected officials, as opposed to what's happening with this attempt to gerrymander the map and allow Texas politicians on the Republican side to choose their voters.
This is day 13 of the Trump Republican shutdown, and House Republicans remain on vacation. These extremists canceled votes for the last 3 weeks. And now earlier today, Speaker Mike Johnson had the nerve to say that Republicans are the party of healthcare. Y'all ain't the party of healthcare. You're the party that continues to destroy the healthcare of the American people. The largest cut to Medicaid in American history. Hospitals, nursing homes, and community-based health centers closing all across America, including in your home state of Louisiana. And now, because of Republicans' refusal to extend the Affordable Care Act tax credits, tens of millions of Americans are about to experience dramatically increased health care costs, all because of your refusal to support the health care of the American people.
Peter, Trump is trying to make this about transgender surgeries for youth, for adults. Is that something the Democrats are negotiating on? And is that something you're willing to move on?
There is nothing about this moment and the need to fund the federal government that has anything to do with any issue other than the health of the American people, the safety of the American people, and the economic well-being of the American people, which includes trying to drive down the high cost of living because our country is too expensive. Donald Trump promised to lower the high cost of living in the United States of America on day one. But costs aren't going down, they're going up. Inflation is going up. Life has become more expensive in the United States of America because of failed Republican policies, including the Trump tariffs. Donald Trump is trying to hide all of that from the American people, which is why he does not want to sit down and have an open discussion with House and Senate Democrats that can be aired out in front of the American people. The statement that Donald Trump issued today was unhinged, and it related to issues that have nothing to do with the spending bill that is before the Congress and the need to try to avoid a government shutdown. Nothing to do with transgender issues or any of the other wild things from the standpoint of what actually is under discussion in the context of this meeting. Leader Schumer and I sent a letter that we publicly released on Saturday that made clear what the stakes are for the American people. And it related to the Republican health care crisis, the attack on Medicaid, the attack on Medicare, the attack on the Affordable Care Act, the attack on our hospitals, nursing homes, and community-based health clinics, and the attack on medical research. Period. Full stop.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Leader. President Trump made the announcement of the strike on Truth Social. So much of the information that we're finding out is from his social media. Are you concerned that a Truth Social post or some sort of social media post could lead to unintended escalation? What are your thoughts about how the president is just conducting his outreach to the American people through his social media channels?
Yes, it's all extraordinary. You know, Donald Trump stated on social media that 3 sites were hit. Were 3 sites hit? We don't know. That's why we need a briefing. Donald Trump suggested that there was a ceasefire, and then it no longer appeared that there was actually a ceasefire. That's why we need, on behalf of the American people, a congressional briefing. Donald Trump suggested that Iran's nuclear program had been completely and totally obliterated. Was that the case, or was that not the case? We don't know. The American people don't know. The American people deserve the truth. Not Truth Social posts that are increasingly unhinged, the American people deserve to know the truth. And that process begins with a congressional briefing that flows from the constitutional responsibility that Congress has and has alone to declare war. The Constitution is not an inconvenience. George Washington, in his farewell address to Congress, and on this issue, George Washington is the OG, the original general, the original war hero, the original revolutionary, and then the first president. And in his farewell address to Congress, he said that the Constitution is sacredly obligatory upon all. That means everyone. That came from the OG, the original general. And Article 1, Section 8, Clause 11 is very clear. On behalf of the American people, Congress, and Congress alone, has the responsibility of declaring war. And that is why the president needs to explain why he did not seek authorization for the use of military force.
Woman is recognized.
I thank the distinguished gentlelady for her tremendous leadership and for yielding. I don't really understand the fatal attraction reference, because if anyone is dealing with fatal attraction, it's between President Trump and House Republicans. As soon as he says jump, your only answer is how high. It doesn't matter whether you are hurting the American people. That's why House Republicans are marching the country on a track toward the largest Medicaid cut in American history. You hurt children, hurt families, hurt Americans with disabilities, hurt seniors, close nursing homes and close hospitals. When Donald Trump says jump, extreme MAGA Republicans say how high. That's the fatal attraction. That's hurting the people of the United States of America. And by the way, the core promise that you made last year was about lowering costs. All you talked about was how you were going to lower the high cost of living. Democrats believe that America is too expensive. Housing costs are too high. Grocery costs are too high. Child care costs are too high. Utility costs are too high. And insurance costs are too high. America is too expensive. And insurance costs are too high. America is too expensive. We believe that that, in fact, is the case. But Republicans have done nothing to lower the high cost of living. No bill, no executive order, no administrative action. That's the broken promise. We were told by President Trump that costs were going to go down on day one. Grocery prices haven't gone down, they've gone up. Inflation is up. You know what's going down? The stock market. Because President Trump and House Republicans are crashing the economy in real time and marching us to a possible Republican recession. That's what's confronting the American people. And so now we have this partisan, reckless spending bill that we're being asked to consider on the floor today. Bipartisan negotiations were underway. Rosa DeLauro was at the table, working to reach an agreement consistent with the Fiscal Responsibility Act that was passed by Republicans and Democrats and then signed into law in 2023. But when Donald Trump says jump, extreme MAGA Republicans say how high. And he ordered the Republicans to leave the negotiating table to try to jam this far-right extremist bill down the throats of the American people. There are so many challenges with this bill, too many to detail. But let me just articulate a few. The House Republican, highly partisan, shutdown threatening bill is an attack on veterans, it's an attack on families, it's an attack on seniors. It cuts funding for veterans, including billions of dollars in funds that will be cut from veterans in desperate need of health care for people who serve this country, who are suffering from painful exposure to toxic substances, Agent Orange and burn pits. And this bill, before this House, cuts billions of dollars in that health care that is desperately needed. That's an attack on veterans. It's an attack on children and families in America because this bill cuts funding for nutritional assistance that would otherwise be available for everyday Americans to put food on the table. When people are already struggling because grocery prices aren't going down, they're going up under this administration. And yet, this Republican bill will cut funding for nutritional assistance. That's an attack on children and families here in America. It's an attack on seniors, an attack on everyday Americans, an attack on housing, an attack on health care, which cuts funds from things like Alzheimer's research to help older Americans battle these challenges. That's what this extreme Republican bill is all about. It will hurt families, hurt seniors, and hurt veterans. The second problem, equally troublesome, is that this bill does nothing to protect Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid. We've been very clear. As Democrats, we look forward in this Congress to protecting these vitally important priorities for the American people. Why is the bill silent on these priorities? Because you are trying to set in motion a chainsaw to Social Security, a chainsaw to Medicare, and a chainsaw to Medicaid. Your other boss yesterday confirmed that when he said that these entitlement programs, as he called them, they're not entitlement programs, they are earned benefits. When you start to use the language of entitlement programs, it's because you're trying to set in motion an assault on Social Security and an assault on Medicare. It's saying the quiet part out loud. We know you're going after Social Security and Medicare because you've been firing thousands of people from the Social Security Administration. You want to collapse the system. And this bill does nothing to stop that. All it does is facilitate the collapsing of Social Security by dismantling the Social Security Administration. And of course, we know what's going on with your assault on Medicaid, $880 billion. Assaulting the health care of the American people. We've been very clear. We'll work together to protect Social Security, protect Medicare, protect Medicaid. You have no interest in doing that because you want to take a chainsaw to these priorities. And by the way, it has nothing to do with waste, fraud, and abuse. As Democrats, we've been very clear. We want to build a federal government, make sure that we have a federal government that's effective, that's efficient, and that's equitable, delivering services all across the country in a manner that spends taxpayer dollars wisely. But that's not what this effort is all about. This bill will unleash fury on the American people. It will facilitate the ongoing effort that is currently underway. The average Social Security recipient in this country receives $65 a day. They have to survive on $65 a day. But you want to take a chainsaw to Social Security. When Elon Musk and his tens of billions of dollars of government contracts essentially makes at least $8 million a day from the taxpayers. If you want to uncover waste, fraud, or abuse, start there. Don't start with the $65 a day that Social Security recipients receive from their earned benefits, from their hard work throughout their entire lives. Start there. Elon Musk is $8 billion a day feeding at the trough of the American taxpayer. This has nothing to do, this bill right here, with waste, fraud, and abuse. It's all part of a broader scheme to pass massive tax cuts for billionaire donors, the wealthy, the well-off, and the well-connected, and then to stick working-class Americans with the bill. This entire scheme. And as Democrats, we want no part of it because we're fighting hard to make life better for everyday Americans, to make sure that when you work hard and play by the rules in the United States of America, you should be able to provide a comfortable living for yourself and for your family. Educate your children, purchase a home, have access to health care. Go on vacation every now and then. One day retire with grace and with dignity. That's the American dream. As House Democrats, we're fighting to preserve. This Republican shutdown bill does nothing to enhance the American dream. It undermines it. Which is why we are strongly opposed to this effort, part of a power grab from those who are unelected, unaccountable, unhinged, and then working at the direction of this administration, which again has done nothing to improve the economy, nothing to lower costs, nothing to make life better for everyday Americans. And this reckless Republican bill will make things worse. I was in Selma over the weekend. We had an opportunity to once again cross the Edmund Pettus Bridge. Think about the fact that John Lewis and Amelia Boykin Robinson and Hosea Williams and so many others, as they stood on that bridge, knew that there was trouble on the other side. But even though there was trouble on the other side, they believed that their cause was righteous, and it was. It was a just one. It was designed to make America the best version of herself. And we stand here today, standing on their shoulders, continuing that effort. How do we make sure that the American dream is alive and well for everyone, in every corner of America, throughout every community? And that's what House Democrats will continue to fight for. That's why we oppose this bill, this effort to hurt families and veterans and seniors and children and everyday Americans. And so we're going to continue to show up, we're going to continue to stand up, we're going to continue to speak up for what is right. We oppose this bill, we oppose this partisan effort to hurt the American people, and we will continue to stand on the side of bringing the American dream to life for every single American. I yield back.
Gentlemen, you. Thank you very much. Speaking of executive orders, we're anticipating that President Trump is going to sign an executive order to dismantle the Department of Education. Tell us how is there going to be a pushback against that, and what's your reaction to it?
I'm glad you asked that question because this is another example. Why do they want to issue this executive order right now? That they know does not have the force of law. Because they want to distract and disorient people coming off a State of the Union or joint address to Congress where he spoke for 100 minutes. It was tough. Sitting there listening to it all, but you spent less than 2 minutes on the economy when people are struggling to live paycheck to paycheck in America, the wealthiest country in the history of the world. 2 minutes or less on the economy because he had nothing to say. Costs aren't going up, they're going down. He didn't say a word about Medicaid. And Donald Trump set the table to eradicate Social Security benefits. There is no situation where people who are 100, 150, 200 years old, 300 years old, receiving Social Security benefits, prove that. Everybody knows he lied to the American people. So it was a horrible performance. One of the most divisive presidential addresses ever delivered in the history of the country. So what do they want to do? Distract from it all. You can't abolish the Department of Education through an executive order. He apparently likes losing in court because he'll lose again. Because as soon as this gets issued, he's going to be sued and he's going to lose. And the votes don't bring the bill to Congress. We welcome that fight. Bring the bill to Congress if you want to get rid of the Department of Education. We'll stand on the side of the American people, and they'll continue to stand on the side of Elon Musk.
And now we'll take questions. I'll go here and then.
If you look at other states, Republican and Democratic, the percentage hold by the congressional delegation far outweighs the percent vote of the statewide. Texas is actually behind the curve of states like Florida and California and Illinois in their percentage hold on congressional delegations. How is this different than what's going on in other states?
It's clear to us that the Texas congressional map is already gerrymandered for a whole host of reasons, and that litigation is currently in court, and we believe that the 3-judge panel will likely decide that the current map violates the Voting Rights Act because it is undermining the ability of communities of color led by the Latino community to elect the candidate of their choice. Each state, and whether it's in compliance with the law, has to be evaluated based on the demographics of that state. And when you evaluate the demographics here in the state of Texas, as has been illustrated, the current map violates the law. And this congressional map will double and triple down on the extreme racial gerrymandering that is silencing the voices of millions of Texans. CARE Act tax credits, notwithstanding the fact that the 5 states most impacted are West Virginia, Wyoming, Alaska, Mississippi, and Tennessee. All right. Got something?
Sure. Saturday is the start of early voting in New York City. Are we going to get some indication this week about your intentions in that race?
Yes, that's my intention.
Thank you, Mr. I know that you said that President Trump hasn't engaged much in talks since that initial meeting. When is the last time you've spoken to House Speaker Mike Johnson? Have you initiated contact since the last time?
Speaker Johnson and I had a conversation this weekend. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Everyone, all across America, House Democrats and Senate Democrats are holding a Save Social Security Day of Action. Why? Social Security here in New York City and across the country faces an unprecedented assault, the likes of which have not been seen since 2005, when former President George W. Bush tried to privatize it. Donald Trump, Elon Musk, and House Republicans think that Social Security is a Ponzi scheme. Social Security is not a Ponzi scheme. It is an earned benefit. Hard-working New Yorkers pay into Social Security and have done so throughout their entire working life. They've earned their Social Security benefits, worked hard for their Social Security benefits, and deserve their Social Security benefits. It is unacceptable, unconscionable, and un-American that Donald Trump, Elon Musk, and House Republicans are dismantling and closing Social Security offices, jacking up wait times, and preventing hardworking Americans from securing their benefits. Our Save Social Security Day of Action will take place throughout America to raise awareness of the unprecedented assault against Social Security here in New York City and throughout the country, and to make clear that we are going to do everything possible to protect Social Security and strengthen Social Security so that the American people receive the earned benefit that they deserve. Questions?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Leader. I spoke to a couple of your Republican colleagues before I left Washington who criticized your position that Democrats are protecting Social Security, quote, as we know it. They say Social Security as we know it has a possibility of not being solvent in a few years, which is why they propose raising the retirement age, all of the other reforms that I'm sure you're well aware of. What's your response to Republicans? What's your response to Americans out there who are looking at some of these reforms and are concerned about the solvency of the program going forward?
Social Security is an incredibly solvent program right now. The Social Security Trust Fund has approximately $2.7 trillion. Social Security is under threat because of Republican attacks against it. Republicans believe that Social Security is a Ponzi scheme. It's not a Ponzi scheme. Project 2025 is a Ponzi scheme. And the fact that they are trying to manufacture this notion of widespread waste, fraud, and abuse is the tell as it relates to Republican efforts to dismantle Social Security as we know it.
And one more, if I can. There's reports that when you guys get back to Washington, that the Trump administration is going to send congressional Republicans a rescission package, foreign aid, NPR, public broadcasting. What's your response to those reports, and have Democrats had that discussion internally about how you all will respond to a potential rescissions package from the Trump administration?
We have not seen the rescission package or had the opportunity to have an engaged House Democratic Caucus conversation about it. We will have a House Democratic Caucus meeting virtually at some point within the next week or so, and a discussion on the rescission package will feature prominently in our meeting.
Appreciate it.
All right, thank you.
And just to be clear, are you concerned that Social Security is going to be privatized, even though they've said that they won't do that? What is your concern?
There's no reason to trust Donald Trump, Elon Musk, or House Republicans as it relates to Social Security. If they believe that Social Security is a Ponzi scheme, then it is at risk of potentially being privatized. At the end of the day, Social Security offices throughout New York State are being closed. Wait times are skyrocketing, and people are being denied access to their hard-earned benefits. The Republican playbook has often been to demonize something in order to downsize something and ultimately try to privatize that very thing. We see that process unfolding before our eyes. Republicans are demonizing Social Security by calling it a Ponzi scheme. They are downsizing the ability of the Social Security Administration to provide earned benefits to New Yorkers and the American people, which leads to the ultimate conclusion that they may be trying to privatize it because that has been on their agenda in the past. Hey, everyone. Yeah.
Switching gears on topics for a
Sure.
second. I just wanted to talk about the person who was deported from Maryland to El Salvador. I know that you've spoken about steps that you might be taking. I know that some lawmakers say that they might travel down there. What steps are you planning to take? Do you have any comments on it? The White Wing speak out later today. What comments do you have?
I support the efforts and leadership of Senator Chris Van Hollen, who is trying to meet with the president of El Salvador while he is here in the country. President should accept that meeting request and have a real discussion as to when Mr. Abrego Garcia is going to be returned to his family in the United States of America. The Supreme Court has made clear that Mr. Abrego Garcia should not have been deported. In fact, the Trump administration has acknowledged that fact. And so they need to comply with the Supreme Court's directive, or the Supreme Court needs to enforce its order aggressively, which should include contempt.
One more on Social Security, if I can, this week. What's your position on eliminating taxes on Social Security benefits? Some independent estimates say it would cost over 1.4 to 1.6 trillion over the next decade. It's a promise that Trump made over the campaign trail. Some of your Republican colleagues are trying to figure out how to make the math work and reconciliation. What's your position on eliminating taxes on Social Security benefits?
It's a reasonable proposal to consider, but it has to be done in a bipartisan way. All right? Thank you, everyone.
Yes.
Thank you very much. Hakeem Jeffries earlier today said to expect swift legal action if Adelaide Grijalva isn't sworn in today during the pro forma session. What's your reaction to that? And are you still committing to only swear her in once the House is back in session?
I thought Hakeem was a better attorney than that. It's a publicity stunt by a Democrat attorney general in Arizona who sees the national moment and wants to call me out. She has nothing whatsoever to do with what's happening in Congress. Rep-elect Grijalva is to be congratulating for winning her late father's seat. We love that. We're going to administer the oath to her as soon as we get back to our regular legislative session, as I've said 1,000 times. That is the issue. We're going to, I'm following the Pelosi precedent, by the way, as I've noted here. Our dear friend and colleague, Julia Letlow from Louisiana, won her special election in similar circumstances, replaced her late husband, who passed away tragically because of COVID, Luke, our friend. And Julia won the race, and Nancy Pelosi took 25 days to administer the oath to her, and no one held a rally or stomped around or barged indoors or did TikTok videos about it, because we understood that was the way the process works. If you look over the history of the institution, this is how it works. No one is impeding her. And by the way, I would say to Rep. Grijalva, if her Democrat colleagues and leadership have not informed her, you can be serving your constituents right now. You have an office. She's hired 16 employees. They keep going by and knocking on the door and pretending it's locked. If it's locked, it's because Rep. Grijalva is choosing not to represent her constituents. She can be handling their calls, directing them appropriately, and doing lots of important work right now. I don't know if she is. I hope she is. No ill will towards her at all. I'm going to congratulate her, as I do every colleague who comes in, and we'll do it as soon as we can get the government open again, and get all these Americans who are suffering taken care of. Yes, ma'am. Back here.
There is a new reporting this morning that President Trump has a detailed plan. It's been in the works for weeks, apparently, to send National Guard troops into Chicago. What is your plan as the Democratic leader in the House to fight that?
Well, I strongly support the statement that was issued by Governor Pritzker, making clear that, one, there's no basis, no authority for Donald Trump to potentially try to drop federal troops into the city of Chicago. There's been no request from the state of Illinois, no request at all for federal assistance. I support the Chicago Police Department. I support the New York Police Department. These are men and women who have taken an oath to protect and serve these communities, and they do a great job of that. And we should continue to support local law enforcement and not simply allow Donald Trump to play games with the lives of the American people as part of his effort to manufacture a crisis and create a distraction because he's deeply unpopular. The one big ugly bill is deeply unpopular. Ripping health care away from millions of Americans is unpopular. Enacting tax breaks for their billionaire donors is deeply unpopular. And that's why a lot of this is taking place, Donna.
Do you think it's manufactured that Americans, even likely in the city of Chicago, are worried about crime?
Of course, people are going to be worried about public safety all across America. I represent a community that for decades has had to deal with the crack cocaine epidemic, the failed war on drugs, gunshots going off at different points in time in communities. So of course, all of us will continue to focus on making sure we can drive down crime whenever and wherever it is taking place. This is not about the American people. The American people understandably want safer communities. As Democrats, we want safer communities. We want to continue to make sure that crime can go down as it's doing in Chicago, in New York, in Washington, D.C., and other places. And to do that, we should support local law enforcement. We should make sure that the flood of guns into these communities is cut off. We should make sure that we're dealing with the mental health crisis that exists all across the United States of America, and by the way, which Donald Trump is exacerbating by cutting funds to actually help people who are dealing with emotional distress.
Leader Jeffries, in regards to Attorney General Pam Bondi's announcement yesterday, I want to get your perspective on the Department of Justice lawsuit against Governor Hochul, and what role do you think, if not just the New York congressional delegation, but Democrats in general, what kind of role do you think you need to play in addressing the tensions between state and federal immigration policies if they're going to overreach like this?
I have not had the opportunity to speak with Governor Hochul about this issue or Attorney General Tish James, but I expect that there will be a forceful response to this overreach by the Department of Justice. We will not be intimidated at all, ever, by the Trump administration and anything that these far-right extremists attempt to do to hurt New Yorkers or hurt the American people. We will not be intimidated. What in our record suggests, particularly as it relates to the House of Representatives, that this crowd over there will intimidate us? What in our record suggests that? What in 2017? What in 2018? What in 2019? What in 2020? What in 2021? What in 2022? What this year suggests that House Democrats are going to be intimidated by any of the extremism that is coming out of 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue? We're going to push back. We're going to push back forcefully. We will certainly defend the people of the great state of New York and the American people. Good morning, everyone. Democrats have made clear to the American people over the last several weeks that this country is far too expensive. The cost of living is way too high. And Donald Trump, as well as House Republicans, have failed to do anything about it. Donald Trump and House Republicans promised to lower the high cost of living on day one. Costs haven't gone down in the United States of America. It's gone up. America is too expensive. Inflation is on the rise. And Donald Trump and Republicans have failed to keep their core promise to make life more affordable. Housing costs are too high. Health care costs are too high. Child care costs are too high. Utility costs are too high. Electricity bills are skyrocketing as we speak because of the failed policies of Donald Trump and the one big ugly bill. and the American people are struggling to live paycheck to paycheck, can't thrive, and in so many instances can barely survive. America is too expensive. Republicans have broken our healthcare system and unleashed the unfortunate and painful reality that millions of Americans are about to experience dramatic increases in their healthcare premiums, copays, and deductibles. Millions of families will incur thousands of dollars in additional healthcare costs a year when they are barely making it right now. Democrats are prepared to support a bipartisan spending agreement that meets the needs of the American people in terms of their health, public safety, and economic well-being. But we will not support a partisan Republican spending bill that continues to rip away health care from the American people.
Thank you very much, Mr. Leader. Two quick questions for you. One, I want to get your reaction to Russ Vogt announcing this $18 billion hold on infrastructure projects in New York City. Do you think you're personally being targeted?
The Trump administration is targeting the jobs, thousands of jobs, of hard-working Americans, working-class Americans, and blue-collar Americans who are going to lose the ability to work at the 2nd Avenue subway site or at the other project that has been canceled related to the Cross Harbor Tunnel. That's consistent with what the Trump administration has consistently done throughout their time in office. Lose jobs, cause economic pain and hardship for the American people is shameful, but is very consistent with the Trump administration's track record of failing on the economy and targeting working class Americans.
And then just one.
Speaker, I rise today in strong opposition to the reckless Republican budget, which is a betrayal of working class Americans, middle class Americans, children, seniors, and everyday Americans all across the country. I thank the distinguished gentleman from Pennsylvania, the top Democrat on the Budget Committee, Brendan Boyle, for his leadership, all of the members of the Budget Committee, all of the members of the House Democratic Caucus who are standing up for the American people by opposing this reckless Republican budget that will devastate people all across the land. It's not consistent with promises that were made to the American people. It's the exact opposite. Here's the promise that was made to the American people over and over and over again, that Republicans were going to drive down the high cost of living in the United States of America and combat inflation. That was the promise that you made to the American people. As House Democrats, we're working hard to lower housing costs, lower grocery costs, lower insurance costs, lower utility costs, and lower child care costs because we know America is too expensive. We want to drive down the high cost of living. But on the other side of the aisle, we haven't seen a single bill introduced by Republicans to drive down the high cost of living, address the affordability crisis in the United States of America. Not a single executive order issued by President Trump has anything to do with driving down the high cost of living. Not a single administrative action taken this year by the Trump administration has anything to do with driving down the high cost of living. In fact, costs aren't going down in the United States of America. Costs are going up. Grocery prices are going up. Inflation is going up. Republicans are crashing the economy in real time. So you've betrayed the American middle class, working families, everyday Americans, children and seniors with this $4.5 trillion budget scheme. And don't come to the House floor and act like this was being done in the name of fiscal responsibility. Enough with that narrative. There's nothing in the Republican track record to suggest to the American people that you are the party of fiscal responsibility. Absolutely nothing. President Reagan comes into office. His signature legislative accomplishment is a massive, unpaid-for tax cut for the wealthy, the well-off, and the well-connected. And what does it do? Increases the debt by $2 trillion. That's not fiscal responsibility. That's recklessness. That's your record. Those kind of fiscal policies continued for 8 years, carried over into the presidency of George H.W. Bush. And then we see a massive debt handed over to President Bill Clinton. What do Democrats do with that massive debt? We turn that debt into a surplus over an 8-year period of time, and the economy exploded. That's what fiscal responsibility looks like. That happened under President Bill Clinton. Stop saying to the American people that you're the party of fiscal responsibility. The facts say exactly the opposite. And so a budget surplus is handed over to President George W. Bush, who proceeds in 2001 and then again in 2003 to pass massive tax cuts, same playbook, here we go again, massive tax cuts for the wealthy, the well-off, and the well-connected that explode the debt by $8 trillion. And at the same time, we have a failed war in Iraq and a failed war in Afghanistan. Over time, adding another $8 trillion to our nation's debt. That burden is handed over to President Barack Obama, who during the period of his time in office, when he had a $1.5 trillion deficit, cuts it by $1 trillion, despite the fact that he also inherited from Republicans the Great Recession and had to turn things around. So he cuts the deficit by $1 trillion, from $1.5 trillion to $500 billion. You asked about numbers? Here are the numbers. And then that gets handed over to President Trump in his first term, who proceeds, of course, to follow the same Republican playbook. Has nothing to do with fiscal responsibility and everything to do with massive tax cuts for the wealthy, the well-off, and the well-connected. And so Republicans passed the GOP tax scam. 83% of the benefits set aside for the wealthiest 1%. And in connection with the GOP tax scam, explode the debt by another $2 trillion that you force working families, middle-class folks, and everyday Americans to pay for. Republicans are not the party of fiscal responsibility. Stop trying to convince the American people otherwise. Same playbook. In fact, during the administration of Donald Trump, during his first 4 years, the debt exploded to such a degree that 25% or so of our nation's debt came from just the first term of President Donald Trump. 25%. We've been around for over 248 years. The party of fiscal responsibility. And then, of course, President Biden inherits significant deficit, overwhelming debt in his 2 years. First 2 years gets a lot done and cuts the deficit by $1.7 trillion. There's still a lot of work for all of us to do. But do not pretend that any of this, that this budget resolution has anything to do with fiscal responsibility or keeping your promises to the American people. You promised to lower the high cost of living, have done nothing about it. And so, Here we are again. There you go again with this GOP tax scam. Same exact playbook. $4.5 trillion worth of cuts for the wealthy, the well-off, and the well-connected disproportionately to benefit billionaire donors and well-connected corporations. To make matters worse, you would actually cut programs, cut the social safety net, cut the things that matter to working-class Americans, middle-class Americans, young people, seniors, and others, including up to, if not more, $880 billion of cuts to Medicaid. That's the largest cut to Medicaid in American history. That doesn't help working-class Americans, doesn't help middle-class Americans, doesn't help children, doesn't help older Americans. It will devastate them. Devastate children, devastate people with disabilities, devastate seniors, devastate pregnant women all across the country, devastate nursing homes, shut down hospitals, including in rural America, in urban America, in small-town America, in the heartland of America. That's what the Republican budget betrayal is all about. Devastate supplemental nutritional assistance programs for our children, for our veterans, for our families. That's what the Republican budget is all about. Has nothing to do with making life better for everyday Americans. It will hurt everyday Americans. So Democrats are not going to provide this reckless Republican scheme, this out-of-control budget, a single vote, not a single vote, because we're standing on the side of the American people. We will fight this reckless Republican budget today. We will fight this reckless Republican budget tomorrow. We will fight this reckless Republican budget until it's buried deep in the ground, never to rise again, and stand on the side of the American people at all times. Vote no.
Gentleman from Pennsylvania reserves his time. Gentleman.
Mr. Leader, good afternoon. Thank you. I know there's a lot of messaging going on both sides of the aisle, even inside your party. Ocasio-Cortez and Bernie Sanders, they had their feed. They seem to be getting a lot of attention here. There was a lot of criticism of the official Democratic feed and glitches and everything else. To what do you attribute what Ocasio-Cortez and Sanders are doing compared to what you guys were doing and the criticism that was leveled about?
I have no idea what that question actually is intended to mean. Like, Democrats have been all over the country engaging in every possible way, communicating with the American people that we're privileged to represent as it relates to the stakes of this fight. And our position, from the most progressive member all the way through to our most moderate members, has been consistently clear. Cancel the cuts, lower the costs, save health care. And everybody's on board because we all share those values. And we continue to be in a more is more environment. So I think that observation seems to be the silliest thing possible when we're fighting to defend the health care of the American people. And by the way, anybody who understands what a more is more environment means is that you create content that can then be distributed by members to their constituents, and that's what members continue to do, speak authentically to the people that they're privileged to represent.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Leader. House Republicans, including Derek Van Orden and Byron Donalds, have suggested that the Trump administration was justified in not providing the briefings that you've asked for because the information would be leaked. They say that members would leak to the press and that the Trump administration was correct to keep this information secret. What's your response to these Republicans who say that you all would have leaked the information, classified information, had you received it in the manner that you requested
The
it?
Trump administration can't point to a single example of a Gang of 8 briefing being disclosed to the American people in a manner that would have created harm to the United States of America. I challenge them, point to a single example of a Gang of 8 briefing over the last several administrations resulting in information that was classified becoming public. What is the administration hiding? And by the way, the strike has already occurred. On Saturday, at the highest levels, respectfully request of the White House to provide an immediate Gang of 8 briefing. And it still hasn't happened. This is after the strike has occurred. Come up to Capitol Hill and justify your actions. Justify the fact that you may be taking us to a war that your own people in the MAGA verse don't want. Your own people. And you have a responsibility to explain that to the American people, and so far, they failed to do it, even at the highest levels of congressional leadership. Good afternoon, everyone. This is day 30 of the Trump Republican shutdown, and House Republicans remain on vacation. They've canceled votes for 5 consecutive weeks. House Republicans are missing in action. Yet, Speaker Mike Johnson is saying the quiet part out loud. It's extraordinary that earlier today, Mike Johnson admitted that Republicans are willing to starve hungry children in this country and take away SNAP benefits starting on November 1st so they can pressure Democrats into gutting the health care of the American people. That's what Mike Johnson admitted to just a little while ago. That's extraordinary. But it's what we know to be the case. For Republicans, from the very beginning of this presidency, cruelty has been the point. And what has been driving their policy agenda is to make life better for the wealthy, the well-off, and the well-connected. That's what the one big ugly bill was all about. Largest cut to Medicaid in American history, ripping food away from the mouths of children, seniors, veterans, and families, and all of this was done to provide massive tax breaks to their billionaire donors. And now as we approach November 1st, just 2 days from now, the beginning of open enrollment, tens of millions of Americans, including many in the state of Louisiana, are about to experience dramatically increased premiums, co-pays, and deductibles that will bankrupt them because of Republican refusal to extend the Affordable Care Act tax credits. Democrats will continue to stand up for everyday Americans, for working class Americans, and for middle class Americans, for the poor, the sick, and the afflicted, for the least, the lost, and the left behind throughout this country. We're in this fight until we win this fight because we know we're on the right side of this fight for the American people, to protect their health care and to stop these cruel Republicans from ripping SNAP benefits away from the American people.
Mr. Leader, on a similar vein of standing up for Congress's authority, what are you trying to do, if anything, about the Qatari plane, and what steps are you taking to
assert Congress's authority over this, and when it comes to the Library of Congress?
Well, Congressman,
what can you do?
Jamie Raskin has been very clear on this issue as it relates to the Constitution. A $400 million flying palace is an unconstitutional gift to this president or any president if it is not explicitly approved by the United States House of Representatives and the United States Senate. That's what the Constitution explicitly makes clear. There's no way around it as far as we're concerned. And so the president presumably is going to take that next step and seek congressional authority, which I believe we will clearly and decisively reject. It's an embarrassment. Literally, millions of people in this country are struggling to live paycheck to paycheck. Can't afford housing, can't afford groceries, can't afford to pay their utility bills, can't afford child care, can't afford insurance. And Donald Trump is publicly defending accepting a $400 million flying palace from a close ally of Iran and Hamas? I mean, you can't make this stuff up, which is why even some of his closest MAGA sycophants have made clear this is a plane too far for them. Too far for them.
Okay. Well, we met with the president for the first time since all of these issues started, even though we have requested repeated meetings with Leader Thune, Speaker Johnson, and the president. We have very large differences on health care and on their ability to undo whatever budget we agree to through rescissions and through impoundment, as well as pocket rescissions. And I think for the first time, the president heard our objections and heard why we needed a bipartisan bill. Their bill has not one iota of Democratic input. That is never how we've done this before. When I was leader, we negotiated 4 times with Republicans, and we never had a shutdown. And so it's up to the Republicans whether they want to shut down or not. We've made to the president some proposals. Our Republican leaders will have to talk to him about them, but ultimately he's the decision maker. And if he will accept some of the things we asked, which we think the American people are for, on health care and on rescissions, he can avoid a shutdown. But there are still large differences between us.
There was a frank and direct discussion with the President of the United States and Republican leaders, but significant and meaningful differences remain. Democrats are fighting to protect the health care of the American people, and we are not going to support a partisan Republican spending bill that continues to gut the health care of everyday Americans. Period. Full stop. There's a Republican-caused healthcare crisis that is causing hospitals and nursing homes and community-based health clinics all across the country, in rural America, urban America, small-town America, the heartland of America, and black and brown communities throughout this country. And that crisis is happening right now. And that's why we believe there's urgency to both keeping the government open, reaching a bipartisan spending agreement that actually meets the needs of the American people in terms of their health, their safety, their economic well-being and quality of life, while also addressing the dangerous Republican health care crisis.
We laid out to the president some of the consequences of what's happening in health care. And by his face and by the way he looked, I think he heard about them for the first time. The closing of rural hospitals. The fact that so many clinics are closing. And I don't know if he knew this before, but the fact that people will pay $4,000 more a year, $400 more a month, close to $5,000 more a year on their health care premiums if we don't do anything. And people don't know what to do. The average working family can't afford that. I told him how I met a mother who was crying to me because her daughter had cancer. And what has happened with health care, with what they have done, she's going to watch her daughter suffer and maybe die. And so he seemed to, for the first time, understand the magnitude of this crisis, and we hope he'll talk to the Republican leaders and tell them we need bipartisan input on health care, on rescissions into their bill. Their bill does not have these, they never talk to us. Thune didn't negotiate with me. Johnson didn't negotiate with Hakeem. And on the key issues, the Appropriations Committee, which has talked about 3 of the smaller bills, they're good bills, they said the appropriators couldn't agree and said kick it up to the 4 leaders. They still haven't talked.
And let me say, we're deadly serious about addressing the Republican-caused health care crisis because it's a deadly serious issue for the American people. Largest cuts in Medicaid in American history. Hospitals, nursing homes, and community-based health clinics closing right now. The fact that more than 20 million Americans are on the brink of experiencing dramatically increased premiums, co-pays, and deductibles because of the Republican refusal to extend the Affordable Care Act tax credits, which benefit working-class Americans. And we pointed that out. I pointed that out. Working-class Americans, their health care, that's what we're fighting to preserve, to defend, and to strengthen. Thank you.
Leader Schumer. We're going to be shut down.
Is there any shutdown short or CR? Is the government going to shut down in 30 hours?
Want to ask you about November 1st, which is when open enrollment begins, as you know, and some rates are already being set. There are some who think that's a date by which, at this point, the leverage over the shutdown may not matter as much because the ACA subsidies will be in motion in terms of the rates. How do you feel about that idea?
Well, our view has always been that we have to address the Republican health care crisis and the need to extend the Affordable Care Act tax credits with the fierce urgency of now, because at this moment in time, notices are going out to people all across the country indicating that their premiums, co-pays, and deductibles are about to skyrocket. People are about to pay thousands of dollars more per year. And for many hardworking American taxpayers, they're talking about their health insurance rates doubling, tripling, or quadrupling. In the congressional district that Speaker Johnson represents, you're talking about thousands of people in his district who are about to experience a 379% premium increase. How is that acceptable? That's happening right now. One of the reasons why we have to act right now is because of the November 1st open enrollment period. That's just the beginning of the open enrollment period. It'll last until early to mid-December. And so Republicans can try to run away from this problem that they've created by continuing to break our health care system, but they will not be able to hide. And that will become increasingly clear, as Marjorie Taylor Greene consistently has pointed out, in the weeks to come.
Leader Jeffries.
Leader Jeffries. Congressman, Rep. Al Green was just censured by the House. What is your reaction to that?
I voted no. The censure resolution put forth by extreme MAGA Republicans is not worth the paper that it was written on.
So, thank you, Leader. So on Tuesday morning, it was reported that you and other leadership told Democrats to refrain from using any signs or do anything attention-grabbing, with the overall message to not become the story. And given that wasn't the case, in terms of leading and controlling your conference, how are you feeling about Democratic unity under your leadership? Are you feeling secure with that and in your leadership position right now?
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. O'Leary. Going back to the censure, these types of resolutions used to be a dime a dozen, and it seems like, I mean, last year there were 3 of them against House Democrats. Can you just reflect on this shift from censure resolutions being for the most egregious forms of misconduct and now being used as political weapons?
Republicans are playing political and partisan games with their censure resolutions because they are on the run. Republicans are on the run with respect to the economy. Donald Trump consistently promised that grocery prices were going to be lowered on day one. But costs aren't going down, they're going up. The stock market isn't going up, it's going down. Inflation is up. And Donald Trump and House Republicans are crashing the American economy in real time. Republicans are on the run with respect to the economy. Not a single bill, not a single executive order, and not a single administrative action has been put forth by Donald Trump or House Republicans to improve the economic circumstances of the American people. And folks are taking notice all across the country, which is why his approval ratings aren't going up, staying the same. They're going down, particularly as it relates to the economy. Republicans are on the run as it relates to the economy. Republicans are on the run as it relates to health care. They're not even having town hall meetings anymore because they are afraid to hear from their own constituents who do not want them to enact the largest Medicaid cut in American history. And Republicans are on the run with respect to the GOP tax scheme.
So are you saying that you believe that the resolution was to distract from?
Everything they do is a big, massive distraction. House Democrats, we're going to continue to focus on the issues that matter to the American people. That's why every single House Democrat voted against the reckless Republican budget. We're standing on the side of Medicaid and the American people. Republicans are standing on the side of their billionaire puppet masters, like Elon Musk.
Yeah, thank you. On that point, you're talking about Medicaid, you're talking about grocery prices, trying to focus on things that everyday people feel. Do you think that the protest tactics on Tuesday are an effective way to communicate that message?
We're going to continue to keep the focus on the American people. It was a shocking and extraordinary exchange. American support for Ukraine is anchored in our own national security interests. America is stronger when Russia is weaker. And we, of course, are weakened when Russia is stronger. And we cannot allow Russian aggression to succeed here. And that is why we've supported the bravery and courage of the Ukrainian people. Ukraine is also standing on the side of democracy, freedom, and truth. Russia is standing on the side of tyranny, oppression, and propaganda.
Thank you, Mr. Leader. President Trump posted on True Social late last night that he wants to resume nuclear testing and is reportedly told the Pentagon to immediately resume U.S. nuclear weapons testing. I was wondering if I can get your reaction to that and what that means for some of our adversaries like Russia and China.
Yeah, it appears that the resumption of nuclear testing would be a massive breach of international treaties that have been in place for decades. And it's just another example of Donald Trump and Republican policies going too far, being divorced from reality, and that Donald Trump and Republicans are not focused on the main thing that the American people want us in the Congress to address, which is why, as Democrats, we're going to continue to relentlessly focus on driving down the high cost of living in this country and fixing the healthcare system that Republicans have broken. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise today to address one issue of concern to the American people, and then an incredibly important issue related to the district that I am privileged to represent back home in Brooklyn. The American people elected us to solve problems on their behalf, to address the issues that matter, like the high cost of living, to lower housing costs, lower grocery costs, lower child care costs, lower insurance costs, and lower utility costs. America is too expensive. And we need to build an affordable economy for hard-working American taxpayers at home in Brooklyn and all across America. That's what we were elected to do, to solve problems. not to make things worse, Republicans have decided to proceed with a budget resolution that sets in motion the largest cut to Medicaid in American history, up to, if not beyond, $880 billion in Medicaid cuts. Children will be devastated. Families will be devastated. Everyday Americans with disabilities will be devastated. Seniors will be devastated. Hospitals will be devastated. And nursing homes will be devastated. Democrats are going to stand on the side of the American people. And that is why each and every Democrat opposed these out-of-control, harmful potential cuts to Medicaid that were part of the Republican budget resolution. And we will continue to stand on the side of the American people to solve problems for hardworking American taxpayers, to make life more affordable, and to ensure that in America, when you work hard and play by the rules, you should be able to provide a comfortable living for yourself and for your family, educate your children, purchase a home, one day retire with grace and dignity, go on vacation every now and then, and of course have access to high-quality, affordable health care, not to take health care away from the American people.
Thank you, Mr. Leader. Next week, you all will be out on recess. It'll be an opportunity for you all to talk to your constituents and let them know what you all have been up to. What's the message going to be to your constituents? What's the expectation that you have of the members of the caucus to be connecting with their constituents, having events, really pushing forward the message that you've been pushing forward over these last few days?
Every opportunity to be back home in the district is a welcome opportunity to engage with the people that we are privileged to represent, to make it clear that House Democrats are fighting hard to drive down the high cost of living, secure the border, while defending dreamers, farm workers, and families, and make sure that we are keeping our communities safe. At the same time, the people of America are understandably alarmed at the parade of horribles and the extremism that is being relentlessly unleashed on the American people by this far-right administration. We were told that grocery prices were going to decline on day one of this administration. On January 20th, grocery prices were going to decline. Why hasn't that happened? In fact, costs are going up, they're not going down. As it relates to groceries, housing, consumer goods, and insurance. Republicans made a lot of promises last year. They spent a lot of time talking about lowering the high cost of living while running away from Project 2025 as if it didn't exist. This year, Republicans have spent all of their time implementing the most extreme parts of Project 2025 and have done nothing, nada, as it relates to the high cost of living. In fact, the Republican budget plan, which represents a betrayal of the American middle class and all those who aspire to be part of the middle class, will hurt working class Americans, hurt middle class Americans, and hurt everyday Americans, children, seniors, and veterans by devastating Medicaid. The Republican Party a few weeks ago promised to love and cherish Medicaid. Cutting Medicaid by close to $1 trillion is an example of loving and cherishing Medicaid. It's an extraordinary statement that was made, and Republicans are doing the exact opposite. In their budget markup right now,
This is an argument that you made and other Democrats made all last year, and the voters didn't go for it. Why should they think it's different? They didn't think Democrats could lower prices, do all these things. Is it just because you're going to say that the Republicans were lying now and Donald Trump was lying?
I think under the previous administration, progress was made in certain areas, particularly as it relates to the high cost of life-saving prescription drugs. But at the same time, it's also clear that so much more needs to be done. There is no debate that can be legitimately had in the United States of America as it relates to the cost of living. The cost of living for working families and middle-class Americans and seniors is far too high. The problem is that Republicans, despite all of their grandiose promises, have done nothing to lower the high cost of living. In fact, the cost of living is going up. With a Republican president, a Republican House, and a Republican Senate. Yes, that's a problem. And we will continue to be clear that in the absence of that changing, Republicans should be held accountable for their failure to deliver on improving the quality of life for everyday Americans. Questions?
Thank you, Mr. Leader. I just want to get your take on this memo that's circulating in the White House that seems to suggest that furloughed workers may not get back pay. What is your reaction to that guidance? And is it your expectation that some type of language to ensure back pay will be included in any final CR or bill once this shutdown is resolved?
Donald Trump and his administration have been torturing federal employees since the very beginning of his presidency, engaging in mass firings, harassing them, brutalizing them, laying people off without justification, and violating the law. So let me be clear to those hardworking federal employees who are now being victimized by this Trump Republican shutdown. We continue to stand with you, and will stand with you as we've done from the very beginning of this presidency. And the law is clear. Every single furloughed federal employee is entitled to back pay. Period, full stop. The law is clear, and we will make sure that that law is followed. Thank you.
On James Comey, he was indicted yesterday, former FBI director. I know you released a statement, but do you care to expand upon that?
Donald Trump and the administration continues to weaponize the Department of Justice and go after perceived political enemies in a manner that's inconsistent with the rule of law in the United States of America. It's outrageous, and the American people are going to hold them accountable. Like, Republicans have failed. The country is heading in the wrong direction. The overwhelming majority of Americans know it right now. And that's why we see Republicans running away from their responsibilities to actually try to make life better for the American people, and are engaging in this effort, unprecedented in nature, to go after perceived political enemies like James Comey. One could argue, wait, what James Comey did 11 days before the election in 2016 had something to do with the fact that Donald Trump got elected the first time around. This is how Donald Trump repays James Comey? With this malicious prosecution? Like, it's all crazy to me. It's crazy to me. These charges are going to be dismissed. James Comey will win in court. But what it reflects is a broader attack on the rule of law that should frighten every single American, whether you're a Democrat, an independent, or a Republican.
Mr. Leader, earlier today, Speaker Mike Johnson said that Democrats have been unresponsive over the last couple of days with respect to government funding negotiations. Can you update us on where things stand? What's your response?
Projection.
I'm sorry, can you clarify that? Because he's alleging that Democrats are trying to set up a potential...
Rosa, first of all, Republicans control the House, the Senate, and the presidency. They have every vote that they need, as we've been lectured, to do whatever the heck they want to the American people. Let's be clear about that. It's not Democrats saying that. That's Republicans. That's the whole idea behind the so-called budget reconciliation process. Republicans have told America repeatedly, we can do whatever we want because we control the House, the Senate, and the presidency. Republicans have been saying that. So I think my initial response, projection, should speak for itself in that context. But what also is clear, as Rosa DeLauro has stated publicly, Democrats continue to negotiate with our Republican colleagues. We want to find bipartisan common ground in funding the government to meet the needs of the American people. Rosa DeLauro, who was leading our effort as the top Democrat on the House Appropriations Committee, has been trying to get Republicans to respond to her for weeks. Weeks. In fact, she's had the opportunity to actually speak with Senate Democrats and Senate Republicans. It's projection. We want to find bipartisan common ground. We are working hard to reach a spending agreement that meets the needs of the American people in advance of March 14th. I'm hopeful that Republicans are actually willing now to sit down at the table and reach a spending agreement in the best interest of the American people, not in the best interest of their billionaire donors.